The email came at 7 a.m. Subject line: Organizational Realignment Notice. No greeting, no signature, just a block of legal-sounding text from HR with the kind of cold precision you'd expect from an auto-generated parking ticket. Effective immediately. Your position has been eliminated as part of a strategic reorganization under our new leadership. Your role is no longer aligned with the company's direction. After 22 years, that was it. No meeting, no call, not even a hallway handshake. Just a 6-paragraph memo and a calendar invite to a 15-minute exit briefing later that day. My name's Carl Bennett. I'm 61 years old. Until this morning, I was senior systems architect at Argonne Tech, a place I helped grow from a converted warehouse with 3 servers into a national software firm with 5 global offices and an IPO. But apparently, I didn't align. I stared at the email for a full minute, rereading that phrase, not aligned, like I was a bad spreadsheet formula. In those 22 years, I'd written over 300 lines of code, rebuilt the network after the ransomware scare in 2014, designed the internal workflow system they still use to this day, trained at least half the IT team, including the current department lead, who hadn't existed when I started. And now I was getting off-boarded like outdated firmware. I didn't reply. Didn't ask for clarification. What was the point? Instead, I clicked Accept on the exit briefing and minimized the window. Outside my office door, I could hear voices, laughter, a cart rolling down the hallway, business as usual. When I finally stood up, I looked around the office I'd occupied for over 2 decades. Same old desk, same warped chair arm, the monitor I bought myself during budget cuts. I'd even resoldered the Ethernet port in the wall after facilities took 3 months to fix it. A career ends the same way it begins, quietly, when no one's really watching. And that's fine. Because what they forgot was that people like me never stop watching. The exit briefing took less than 10 minutes. A junior HR rep named Alicia read from a script, avoiding eye contact like I might detonate. Your final paycheck will include unused PTO. Benefits extend through the end of the month. We'll collect your badge and laptop before you leave the premises. It was the same tone you'd use if you were asking someone to return a library book. I nodded, said thank you, stood, and left without saying another word. There was no goodbye lunch, no speech, just the soft click of the conference room door closing behind me. Back at my desk, I started packing. No rush, just deliberate motion, years of methodical work muscle memoried into my hands. Monitor wiped, personal folders deleted. Badge set gently on the desk like a folded flag. I placed everything that mattered into a single cardboard box. A photo of my daughter from her high school graduation. A ceramic coffee mug from the old Austin office before the merger. The pocket notebook where I jotted server IDs, patch notes, and to-do lists that never made it into Jira. No one said anything. A few junior devs peeked up from their screens. One looked like he wanted to say something, then didn't. I'd trained most of them, walked them through legacy code, pulled them out of outages, shielded them from managers who didn't know a router from a printer. Now they were watching me disappear like cached data still in memory, but inaccessible. It's funny. You can give everything to a place: weekends, holidays, 3 a.m., phone call sand. It will still forget you the second the calendar flips. Argonne used to be a family. That was the phrase the founders threw around back in the early days. Family. Then the IPO happened. Then came restructuring. Then came Derek Langston, the new CEO with his TED Talk energy and his burn the playbook strategy. Apparently, I was part of the old playbook. I carried the box to my car under gray morning light. The sky looked undecided, like it couldn't choose between drizzle and sun. I didn't cry, didn't rage. I just sat in the driver's seat for a few minutes, staring at the building I helped build from the inside out. Then I turned the key and drove home. Quiet, focused. and already making plans. Derek Langston started in January. The press release called him a visionary change agent with a proven record of transformative leadership. Translated, he knew how to gut a company and still smile for the quarterly earnings call. Late 30s, polished, MBA from somewhere expensive. His LinkedIn was full of jargon-agile pivots, digital maturity, stakeholder synergy. The kind of guy who says data storytelling with a straight face. At the town hall, he stood in front of a branded step and repeat like he was at a product launch. No tie, sleeves rolled, expensive watch. The slideshow behind him flicked through words like velocity, disruption, reinvention. He paced. He posed. He talked about evolving culture and shedding legacy mindsets. He never mentioned the people who actually built the systems his PowerPoint stood on. For the first 2 months, he barely acknowledged I existed. I'd sit 3 seats down from him in ops meetings and watch him look through me like I was scenery. When others talked about our infrastructure, he'd tilt his head like they were speaking Latin. When I tried to explain something calmly, concisely, he'd blink slowly, then pivot the conversation to what modern companies are doing. He renamed our department Digital Velocity, hired an outside branding firm to redesign our intranet portal, replaced the original logo with one that looked like a rejected fitness startup. Then he brought in his own people contractors from his previous company. They wore zip-up vests and asked loud questions about streamlining workflows and sunsetting technical debt. They never asked who wrote the systems, never asked who ran them. Because in Derek's world, people like me weren't architects' way, were speed bumps. What he didn't realize, though, was that you can't just erase 22 years with a few slides and a new tagline. Some of us weren't legacy. We were the foundation. And when you try to tear down a house without checking the support beams, things tend to collapse. The first sign was subtle. My root access to the legacy ERP instance was downgraded. Not revoked, just trimmed. No admin overrides. No audit trail alerts. On paper, everything looked normal. In practice, it meant I couldn't see who else was inside the system. Then the shared documentation folder I'd maintained for over a decade vanished overnight. When I asked about it in Slack, no one responded. A week later, I saw it rebuilt under a different naming note stripped, version history erased. My VPN credentials were reissued. Strange, considering they didn't expire for another 6 months. My terminal profile reset. My logs stopped syncing. None of it was flagged as policy. None of it went through InfoSec, where I'd worked until, apparently, I didn't. I didn't raise a fuss. Just watched. Made notes. Because I recognized the shape of what was happening's low erosion masked as optimization. It wasn't amateur work. Someone knew what they were doing. The deletions were surgical. Time to weekends, off-peak hours, just enough deniability to avoid suspicion. Someone was sanitizing history, and they were doing it quietly. But they'd underestimated one thing. Years ago, after an internal compliance scare, I helped the legal team implement a passive monitoring protocol, meant to quietly log privilege escalations and undocumented access patterns, part of a long-forgotten post-mortem cleanup. The thing is, nobody ever turned it off. Or maybe they forgot it existed. I didn't. I'd kept a mirrored node running in a side cluster. Nothing fancy. Just a quiet backup of the logs no one remembered. Not even security. And I'd built it under a dummy service label. Sys, Health, Archive, V2. Buried among 100 other low-priority tasks. It pinged out once a week, archiving silently. I checked it now. And there it was. Every access change. Every modified credential. Every login from Derek's hand-picked team, traced and time-stamped to systems they weren't supposed to touch. Most people forget the infrastructure holds a memory longer than humans do. They thought they'd locked me out. All they did was confirm I needed to start paying attention. It started as a side project. Back in 2011, We had a CFO who liked to adjust numbers right before board meetings. Nothing provable, just discrepancies. A line item for a vendor that didn't match the PO. Budget requests that vanished from SharePoint. Audit logs that mysteriously went missing 2 days after a questionable approval. Legal asked if IT could help. So I built something simple. A low-profile backup node nested inside the main reporting cluster. Not visible on the dashboard, not tied to any named user. Just a daemon process that ran every night at 2:00 a.m., copying system-level metadata document changes, user access logs, approvals, edits. It wasn't a secret, exactly. I wrote up a full report, submitted it to compliance, and got a one-line email from legal saying, "Sounds good, keep it quiet." So I did. 12 years later, that little project was still alive, buried under obsolete cron jobs and decommissioned pipelines, humming quietly beneath a stack of systems no one touched anymore. I'd logged into it maybe twice a year just to make sure it still ran. But now, I had a reason to check. From my home terminalius, still connected through an old IP whitelist they'd overlooked, I accessed the archive. Authentication hadn't changed. No one had reset the encryption key. Inside were over 4 terabytes of records, admin access logs, document diffs, metadata trails that never made it into the main reports. And among them, fresh entries, names I didn't recognize. Credentials tied to Derek's hand-picked transformation team. They'd been inside old contract folders, legacy finance approvals, budget archives from the merger in 2018. And most of it had been edited, moved, or quietly deleted. What they didn't realize was that metadata has a longer memory than Word docs. I copied the latest 2 months onto a secure drive and encrypted it with my personal keychain. Offsite backup. Air-gapped. If they thought firing me meant wiping the slate clean, they'd forgotten the golden rule of systems architecture. There's always another copy. It started with a vendor name I didn't recognize. Narrow Peak Solutions. Supposedly a cloud integration partner. I found it listed in a change order tied to last quarter's infrastructure upgrade I was never consulted on, despite writing the original architecture. The invoice amount was just shy of $240. That number stuck with me. Too round. Too fast. I traced it back through the archived approval logs, thanks to the forgotten backup node, and found the original proposal. It had been fast-tracked. No competitive bidding. No technical assessment. Just a 3-sentence justification, co-signed by one of Derek's innovation strategists. So, I dug deeper. Within 2 hours, I had a list of 6 vendor sol approved in the last 90 days. All with vague scopes of work: platform optimization, cloud cohesion, scalable redundancy, buzzwords with no deliverables. Every one of them had ties to a holding group in Delaware. Same business address, different shell names. A few quick database joins showed something else. 4 of those vendors had overlapping bank accounts. 3 had used the same IP to access our vendor onboarding portal. 2 had the exact same EIN, just spaced differently. Sloppy. One name kept appearing: Wesley Grant, listed as a project liaison on at least 3 contracts. No company email, just a Gmail address. I searched internal directories. Nothing. Searched Slack. One result: a channel created by Derek's admin, now archived. The final piece clicked when I checked public business records. Wesley Grant wasn't just a consultant. He was listed as a board advisor on Derek's last startup, the one that imploded 6 months before he came to Argonne. That company, too, had a consulting deal with Narrow Peak Solutions. Different year, same game. They weren't just hiring consultants. They were funneling money quietly, incrementally through cutout firms tied to people Derek had worked with before. I didn't need to guess what was happening anymore. I had names. I had documents. I had a full access log showing how it all passed through our systems like a virus disguised as a patch. They thought they'd scrubbed the paper trail. They forgot that some of us wrote the trail to begin with. You don't build a scheme like this from scratch. You repeat it. So I started digging into Derek Langston's past, not through LinkedIn or press releases, but through corporate filings, archived board notes, and old employee forums no one moderates anymore. His last company was a mid-sized SaaS firm based in Denver. Publicly, he stepped down to pursue new ventures. Quietly, they settled an SEC inquiry 6 months later for financial reporting inconsistencies. Language designed to sound boring. It wasn't. The numbers were familiar. Vague vendor contracts, inflated consulting invoices, rapid-fire transformation, spending under the guise of modernization. No direct accusations were made. No charges filed. But 3 board members resigned within 2 quarters, and the stock dropped 27%. I started looking for names tied to that company and found one buried in a Reddit thread from 4 years ago, an ex-employee who claimed he'd been forced out after raising concerns about financial mismanagement. I reached out anonymously through a burner email. He responded in under an hour. Said his name was Tom, used to be in procurement, and Yesh remembered Langston. We traded messages for a week. He confirmed the pattern. Derek brought in outside consultants with vague credentials, fast-tracked them through approval, and funneled money into shell firms tied to old colleagues. Anyone who asked questions got reassigned or let go. Tom tried to raise concerns internally. The CFO at the time dismissed them. Then legal sent him a quiet severance offer twice, his annual salary in exchange for an NDA. He declined. They fired him anyway. "You're not imagining this," he wrote. "It's exactly what he did before. Same methods, same buzzwords, same result." I asked if he had proof. He didn't have access to the systems anymore. But he gave me enough breadcrumb details, names, amounts, timelines, that I could line them up against what I was seeing now. And they matched. It wasn't just a hunch anymore. It was a playbook. And this time, I had the original copy. The message came through Signal. No name. Just a phone number I didn't recognize, and a short sentence. "You probably don't remember me, but I used to work under you." I asked for a name. Eli Tran, junior systems analyst I'd mentored 3 years ago. Smart, eager, asked good questions. Last I checked, he was working Tier 2 support. Still with Argonne. We agreed to meet off-site neutral ground. Parking lot of a closed-down outlet mall halfway between the office and nowhere. Eli was already there when I arrived. Hoodie. Backpack. Nervous energy. He looked like he hadn't slept. "Thanks for coming," he said. I didn't know who else to talk to. He pulled out a folder, printed logs, screenshots, emails. Nothing earth-shattering until I started reading. They were gutting my systems. Legacy modules I'd built. Internal tools we'd tailored for compliance. Automated checks built to prevent, well, exactly the kind of spending Langston was doing. "They're saying it's outdated," Eli said. "That it slows things down. But every time they rip something out, something else breaks." I asked who was leading the charge. "Consultants from Pinnacle Dynamics. Came in 2 weeks after you were let go." I recognized the name. Pinnacle had also been listed as a strategic vendor at Langston's last company, the one Tom had mentioned. "How deep are you in?" I asked. "Deep enough that they don't notice me watching," he said. I nodded once. Eli handed me a flash drive. Encrypted. Most of its metadata and access logs. Stuff you'd recognize. Stuff they probably thought was deleted. I looked at the kid, nervous, but steady. "You understand what you're getting into?" He nodded. "I watched them force you out. I watched them erase what you built. That wasn't right." I slid the flash drive into my coat pocket. "You just became very important," I said. He smiled, tight and tired. "Figured it was time someone else learned how to document things the way you taught us." He turned to leave, but paused. "They don't realize it yet," he said. "But the stuff they're breaking? It's not legacy code. It's the alarm system. He walked off into the fog, and I started thinking about what came next. I built the bait system on a Sunday. Took 6 hours. Old code, recycled infrastructure, disguised as a test environment for vendor integration. Nothing flashy, just enough back-end noise to look real if someone was digging. Called it vendor. Proc. Test 3. A name so boring no one would question it. Then I seeded it with a single dummy contract. A 175,000 proposal for infrastructure uplift and process refactoring. Generic. Nondescript. The kind of language Derek's team had been rubber stamping for months. At the bottom, I added a familiar name. Wesley Grant. The contract was fake. The documents were watermarked. The metadata was laced with hidden flags change detection scripts, time-based access logs, and mirrored encryption keys that updated hourly to an off-site storage bucket tied to a secure node only I controlled. If they touched, I'd opened it, moved it, duplicated it, I'd know. And 2 days later, they did. The log pinged at 3:14 p.m. Someone accessed the dummy contract from an IP address tied to Langston's chief strategy officer. 8 minutes later, it was downloaded again, this time by a consultant using a VPN endpoint registered out of Utah. I didn't need to wait for a formal approval trail. They were trying to push it through. I cloned the access logs, pulled the hashed IDs, set up a correlation map that showed the login timestamps, user session fingerprints, and internal routing IDs. Then I ran the metadata back against Eli's access logs. Match. They weren't just testing a contract, they were testing the system, seeing if they could sneak one more shell vendor through the pipeline. I labeled the file. Redline asset, Argon contract shell, pattern evidence VON. Then I encrypted it, backed it up, created 3 versions, one for the board, one for legal, one for insurance counsel just in case. They thought they'd cleaned up the mess. All I'd done was hand them a loaded brush and waited for them to paint themselves into a corner. The quarterly board meeting was scheduled for Thursday, 9:00 a.m. I scheduled the email for 8:30. No subject line, just a link to a secure vault and a message typed in plain text. If you approve Q2 executive bonuses without reviewing the attached, you will be liable for what follows. This is not a threat. It's a mirror. At 8:47, the first red receipt came in. Then, 5 more. Inside the vault was the full report: contract anomalies, shell vendors, falsified signatures, and a complete access map showing how Langston's team had bypassed procurement protocols. I didn't sign the report. Didn't need to. The logs spoke louder than my name ever could. By 9:12, Langston's calendar was blocked out. No more meetings. No movement in Slack. At 9:18, Eli messaged me from a personal account. They shut down the strategy team's Slack channels. All of them. CFO just walked into a closed-door meeting with the chairwoman. CEO's door hasn't opened in 20 minutes. At 9:29, the legal team's inbox showed a forward from the board. Subject line: urgent, immediate review, financial conduct. I sat at my kitchen table, coffee cooling in front of me, laptop open, watching it all unfold from a distance. No theatrics, no grand speeches. Just systems, doing what they were built to: track, timestamp, and reveal. They'd forgotten that documentation is not just a formality. It's a weapon. And now, it was aimed directly at the people who thought they were smart enough to erase the past. By 10:00 a.m., the building was a pressure cooker. Eli sent a message. Everyone's whispering. Langston hasn't come out of his office. Strategy team looks like they've seen a ghost. I refreshed the internal logs. Accesses were spiking. Legal, HR, finance, even archived contract folders that hadn't been touched in 2 years were suddenly lighting up like they were trying to reconstruct a defense in real time. At 16. Langston tried his first move. Deny and deflect. He called an emergency session with legal and 2 board liaisons, claimed the consulting approvals were delegated through proper channels, blamed his chief strategy officer, who in turn claimed Eli had submitted the pipeline entries without proper review. Bad call. The logs proved otherwise. Every keystroke, every approval, every user session fingerprint was traceable. The dummy contract? Signed in real time from Langston's SSO login, confirmed by geolocation metadata, and time sync to his own Outlook calendar. Sloppy. He tried to scrub the record mid-meeting, pushed a kill command to the test server. Didn't realize the mirror node wasn't local. I watched the request bounce harmlessly off a dead endpoint. At 10:42, internal access was revoked for his entire team. VPN credentials invalidated. Slack accounts locked. At 11:03, legal issued a platform-wide freeze on new vendor approvals. Langston tried to stall, requested an external audit, asked for a fair process. The board wasn't buying it. They didn't need an investigation. They had a map. My phone rang at 11:17 a.m. Number withheld. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. This time, I picked up. Carl Bennett? A calm voice. Older. Firm. Yes. This is Marianne Fletcher, independent board director at Argonne. We need to talk. Quietly. I paused. You're calling from a blocked line. There are too many ears right now, she said. What you submitted this morning, it's credible, detailed, devastating. I stayed silent. Langston is cornered, she continued. His people are trying to twist the narrative. But the logs, they don't lie. No, I said. They don't. We need to meet. Off the record. Not at Argonne. She gave a time, a location, a private conference room at a boutique business hotel 2 miles from HQ. I'm not looking for reinstatement, I said. That's not why I'm calling, she replied. I need the rest of what you have. And I think you need to hear what's happening behind those doors. We ended the call. I sat back. Phone still in hand. The silence thick. The trap had worked. The panic was spreading. And now, the reckoning had begun. The meeting room was on the 11th floor of a business hotel that used to be a bank. Thick walls. No windows. The kind of place built to keep secrets. Marianne Fletcher was already inside when I arrived. 2 other board members joined her, quiet men in suits with dark circles under their eyes, and the exhausted look of people who'd spent the morning realizing just how close they came to losing everything. There was no small talk. One of them, a finance committee chair named Roth, slid a folder across the table. We'd like to offer you a formal role, interim COO, or head of compliance, if you'd prefer. Either position would report directly to the board. No executive intermediaries. I didn't open the folder. Not yet. We understand what you've done here, Marianne said. You didn't just flag a problem. You mapped the entire system that allowed it to happen. I nodded. And it wasn't just Langston. No, she said quietly. It wasn't. I looked down at the folder, then back at them. If I come back, it's on my terms. Name them, Roth said. Full audit authority across all business units. No gatekeepers. I pick the team people I trust. I set the protocol. And I want visibility into all financial systems, vendor approvals, and internal communications tied to operations and procurement, retroactively and going forward. They exchanged looks. Not hesitation, just acknowledgement. Done, Marianne said. And one more thing, I added. My name never goes on a press release. No interviews. No statements. I'm not here for the optics. We're not either, Roth said. We're here because you're the only one who knew how the system really worked. I stood. You have my conditions. You'll have my answer by Monday. Langston was placed on administrative leave by the end of the day. Not fired. Not yet. HR called it a temporary step, pending further review. But his keycard was revoked. Laptop collected. Access disabled. The message was clear. By the weekend, 3 more resignations followed: his chief strategy officer, the head of vendor ops, and a longtime board liaison who had co-signed several of the shady contracts. Legal teams swept the procurement logs. Every consulting agreement from the last 12 months was placed under independent audit. A third-party compliance firm was brought in for appearances, but I could already see their roadmap: surface level, PR-driven. That wouldn't cut it. Not now. By Monday morning, I emailed my acceptance. I chose the role of head of compliance, not COO. I didn't want executive perks. I wanted access unfiltered, unmonitored, absolute. I met with Marianne again and handed her my first initiative: a mandatory forensic audit of every vendor partnership dating back 5 years. Names, contracts, IP metadata, access history. No more shadows. No more blind spots. Eli joined my team as a lead systems analyst. I gave him a badge with direct infrastructure privileges. He'd earned it. When I walked into the Argonne building that Monday afternoon, no box in my hand, this time people looked up. Some nodded. Some stared. Not with fear. With respect. Langston had tried to erase the systems I built. Now, those same systems were what exposed him, and I was back not as a relic, but as the one they couldn't replace. 6 weeks later, I walked the halls of Argonne again. Same carpet, same hum of overhead lights, same scent of burnt coffee from the kitchen no one cleaned properly. But something had shifted. People made eye contact now. Developers nodded as I passed. One of the new hires, someone I hadn't trained, hadn't mentored, stood up when I entered the server room, like a reflexive show of respect. I didn't need it, but I noticed. My badge worked everywhere. Conference rooms, exec, suites, the restricted audit cluster no one else but legal could access 2 months ago. I walked through it all not as a relic of the past, but as the one who'd stopped this place from gutting itself in pursuit of speed. Eli met me on the 3rd floor, holding a new set of architecture diagrams. His diagrams, clean, detailed, secure. "You were right," he said. "About what?" "Documentation is the quiet form of revenge." I smiled. "It's the one they never see coming." We walked past what used to be Langston's office. The nameplate was gone. The walls stripped. No one moved into it. The board kept his chair empty. Symbolic. Intentional. Across the building, procurement had been rebuilt from scratch. Every vendor now required triple approval with live access audits. No more shell firms. No more fast tracks. The company was smaller, now less noise. Fewer people pretending to lead. But it was stronger, cleaner, grounded. I stopped near the old break room and looked out the window. Same skyline I'd seen 1,000 times. For years, I thought this place had forgotten me, treated me like expired code. But the truth was simpler. They hadn't forgotten. They just never understood what I actually did, until everything I built kept the walls from caving in. I walked back to my new office. Smaller than the exec suites. No view, but it had what I needed. Secure access, clean systems, a whiteboard full of questions only a paranoid architect would ask. Before I sat down, I looked at the framed note on my desk. A quote Eli printed after his first full week on my team. They thought they were getting rid of dead weight. Turns out I was the anchor keeping it all from drifting off the edge. He wasn't wrong. And now that anchor had teeth. Closure isn't a speech. It's a system, rebuilt stronger than before, because this time, someone made damn sure it couldn't be ignored. This story was intense, but this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.